Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 518 meeting of the Canterbury Regional Council. As you know, this is being live streamed and it will be recorded and made available on the council's website. I'd now like to invite Councillor Pauling, given me for give us a challenge, give us a formula, and get down a best and Thank you, Councillor Pauling. And are there any apologies? There's no apologies. Conflicts of interest. Has anybody got anything additional to what we've already got on the agenda? None that I've been advised. Now we're up to our public forum, and we'll welcome first our speaker to the table, and that's you, Philip Hazelwhite, is going to talk to us about the branding of the well. So pop up to the table, and you've got about 5 minutes, and some councillors might want to ask you some questions. Philip, we'll just get you to pop the button on that speaker in front of you, and just press that when you're ready to start.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Thank you very much for having me this morning. Madam Chair, what I've come to speak to you all about this morning is the proposed rebranding of the bus routes. And I would like to just speak to everyone here that I believe that the top 5 bus routes that you have got need to remain. Because as I am saying here, is that people, especially in the disability community, know and understand these buses by their colours better than they ever will by their numbers. Now, I am not saying to you that you should put in a base colour of teal, say, across all the 23 routes, considering there are 28. But I believe that the top 5 routes, the blue, the orange, the orbiter, the purple, and the yellow, should remain. Because unlike London, where you have the circle route, which is represented on the map as a yellow line, here in New Zealand, when tourists come, and even locals speak from around the country, they say, what sense have you shown here? Because when you say to someone that they want the yellow route for New Brighton, they say to me, well, what bus am I looking for? A yellow bus. Oh, how amazing they've shown such sense here in New Zealand to do it. That those 5 top routes in the city are represented in the way they are. And so, as I say to you, when I was at the Botanic Gardens, I could see hundreds of meters away, as I look that there was the yellow bus, there was the purple bus behind it, and of course in the distance I could see the white bus, so I knew it was the 80. Why? Because those other 2 primary routes, major routes rather, were in their colours. Now, it's okay for people like myself to know the bus system well. But it then also means as you move eastward, I could see the orange bus coming in down Hagley Ave, and I know that it is a critical branch for people. Because if someone's coming down Rickerton Ave and wants to go onto Lincoln Road, they can see the orange bus and they know from hundreds of meters away it's there and ready, and the drivers can also normally get to them on the radio and say, please wait. And that's another very good reason. Now also, the other thing is, you look at, say, the Palms Mall intersection, as I said to you in section C here. You look at all of the buses, you can see that all 6 buses will give good identification. The green, the orbital, the orange, the east-west, the white buses, okay, one goes north, other goes east-west, etc. You can see them all by their colours and their IDs, red. But the confusion now that I believe that you've got is the fact that you've got things like this modern red shade of the red bus, the old one, you've got the white bus on underneath it all. So that's why I'm quite happy to see those other routes in one shade. But please leave the top ones alone. And so, why did I only hear about this on the 15th of September? It was the first I heard about it on the radio. And I have no recollection of any buses at all doing any further work. And never met a person. And I never met anyone in exchange either doing this. It had my survey work done. And I therefore say to you, please understand the issue here for people like myself as a celebrity. So you remember interference in your brain, the stroke, you have difficulties there because you get certain things built into your brain at times like that. You've got things like your bus colours in your mind. These things are crucial points that have been created well. You all like them. As yet, I will ask you one question. Why have I seen no letters in the paper or anywhere yet saying they support the change? I've seen a letter yet, and I got quite a stack of them at home. I would just ask you to consider this as your issue, and I feel that it's something that we need to think about. Often I'll bring my life membership bag out from Epilepsy New Zealand and say to you, that's where I am. at that level. It's a issue, I believe, this we've got brilliant. And if you want to update the lower part of it, do so. But look over there this morning. You have RB908 in the teal colour saying P for summer. Really, sorry, that all was already creating a problem. Because when I saw it go in, I said to myself, that was R908. You should see it on paper, because it used to be a red bus. It's on red colour, now being repainted. But if memory serves me correct, it used to be on the 100 Metro Star. So just by a coat of paint and moving it to another route doesn't mean that it's actually going to improve service. It actually totally threw me that I was expecting a purple bus. It was a mess. And I think that's the problem you've got. Please keep the 5 top routes in their colours, as everyone seems to like them. They are very good, well worth keeping. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that well thought out and presented presentation, Philip. There's a couple of questions. First of all, Councillor Freshwater.
Thank you, Philip. And like I'm interested that you refer to the base colour perhaps for the overall service remaining to like teal. But just what I wondered, Philip, you'll be aware that in fact this council and the Transport Committee plan to upgrade the secondary routes to at least the same efficiency in terms of frequency as the current 5 metro lines. So I'm just like, so then we would be having at least 9 key colours. So I'm just wondering if you've got any suggestions about how in fact we manage, I guess, such a wide range of routes.
I think then you have to look at the fact that you have got already, then you've already got the colour that you can see of the red bus, it's the bottom one, which you use in say the 135. You've got other colours within the colour spectrum. Your important thing is to make sure that you use colours that are going to be seen. If you want to update the time and frequency, there was in actual fact no evidence that colour was the actual benefit to you. Because back in January 2011, before the earthquake, you have it in the paper, getting that passenger numbers were going up by 50,000 passengers per month. And you should ask yourself then, what happened? 5 weeks later, you had the earthquake, and because the bridges were shut for 4 days, because all of the inspections had to be done, you lost 40% of your passenger numbers in 1 year, and it's been a struggle since then to get back up. You also said the other day in the paper that passenger numbers were still going down. The thing that's making people more irritated than anything is, say, like I came in on the 60 today at once every half hour. I think routes like that, which are people are saying once every 20 minutes, they would actually, I think, far more appreciate. And I think that one of the things you've got to do is look at that time perspective in the way some routes operate. Also, in recent times, look at the number of routes that you have taken your service away from going past retirement homes. You took it away the 118 that went past Grant Road, Mayor Marsh, the 44 has not gone into the area of Diana Isaac. And you also had the bus route that went away from Silverstream, and you had a 550-person petition presented to you on that. And so there have been a lot of people out there who want your service, but have been unable to get to it. And so I think you've got other issues as well to think about.
Thank you. Councillor Pauling.
Well, Philip, thanks so much for bringing this to our attention. I'm wondering if you think there are other ways that you could make those lines recognisable, using other like colour strips or technology. Are there other ways you've thought about?
The issue, you could try it, but I do not really think that the work that you have done converting the buses now to their colours really is going to be good enough. The bus in its full colour, 100% basically, with the white lettering on it, can be seen from hundreds of metres away. Could you guarantee me that, say, an orange strip on the side of the teal buses would in actual fact be able to be seen, whereas I can see that if I'm standing at bus stop 4908 outside Shirley Intermediate School, I can see the orange bus turn out Hills Road into Shirley Street, Shirley Road.
Thank you, Philip. Councillor Sanders.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing this to us. I just today we heard about the card system for people who are visually impaired on bus stops. Driver of the bus can see that they're waiting and that it's which of the buses it is that's wanted. Is that something that you're aware of? And if so, does it work? Does it work?
Would you? I didn't quite catch you. I'm sorry.
So there's a card system. We were told there's a card system, so you can hold up a card that you get from the exchange that shows if you have vision impairment, you can hold up your card, which will then flag to the bus that you're wanting the particular bus that's coming down the road. Is that something available? And if so, does it work?
I have heard of it, but I still believe from what I hear from talking to people who are impaired with their vision, and I'm losing mine as time goes by, that the colours are built into memory as to where they are coming from as well. So you're going to have to rebuild in people's minds what they have already learned, understand for many years, which is things like the orbiter, which you've said is going to remain on as a green. It's already there, the orange and the yellow and the blue and the purple are as well. I really feel that still the confusion is in the base. And though if you want to start to make things better, okay. And if you wanted to add another route in, you would have to pick a defining colour. But the ones that are there at the moment have done a great job. And the fact that you get a lot of international recognition from tourists as well for doing a great job and doing a job which seems so common sense and acceptable is something as well which I think you should accept the praise for.
Oh, thank you for that, Philip. One last question, and that's from Councillor Marshall. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, and it's great to hear from you again. I've got a question for you about the process. So if we had publicly engaged on changing the colours, but still ended up with a single colour across everything, would you be feeling the same way?
if people had really wanted to say to you that it had been really the way they had wanted to go, it would have been something that people have to consider. But the problem is the neuro perspective of the brain and the way it operates. And I can't change that and what's happening to me and to others and to people in the way that the neurological structure of my brain operates as it deteriorates from every seizure and the like. You get certain colours that are stuck in your brain as they operate, and they become very much a factual part of the way your brain operates to keep you going and keeps you going out there. But this is the thing that I ask you, why do I receive so much of your stuff, which I receive a lot of it? I've got heaps of it, but I could print off on the Waimakariri dates, but I have never had anything in writing about this at all. Now, if it was something you wanted to get good support from, well, surely places like myself and others and everyone who's on your list there, why wasn't it sent out as an email to us a long time ago? Because unfortunately, who you ask on a bus doesn't always reflect on the issue that you get to the best people to answer. And the other thing is, you look at the people getting on and off the bus, quite often talking to them, you find that your genuine passengers are the ones with their metro cards, and the people who get on and pay the cash fare, they say, oh, well, I only use it once every so often. They don't even realise that a metro card is there to benefit them. And I think that you have to remember, if you want good response, please send it out on the email to us. You would have got a far better response to it than through that research company.
Very much for making those points and coming to see us today. So what we're going to do is move a resolution to refer your matter to the CEO, and you'll get a reply. So I'd like to call for a mover that the council receives a request from Philip Haythornwaite regarding the rebranding of the buses and refers the matter to the Chief Executive. Moved by Councillor Avanui and seconded by Councillor Vicky Southworth. All those in favour, please say aye. That is carried. Thank you very much for coming up and speaking with us. Thank you. It's very good of you to come. We're pleased to see you. Thanks very much. The next person I would like to welcome to the table is Robin Heatherington Wilson, and she's here to speak to us today about toxicity in land and water. And we would like to hear from you, and it's all about the health and the connections between our health and the land and the people. So thank you for coming, Robin, and over to you.
Sure. I'd like to open with a mihi to Io Matua, to Ranginui, and to Papatuanuku, and to our Moana Kahukura, and to our Awa Waikarimoana. Not Waikarimoana, sorry. We were talking about that before. Waimakariri, our local one. Paul Robin Toko Ingoa. Papatuanuku is my chief sustainer. She is what gives me life. She is what gives me sustenance and enables me to live, and she is my technology. I was immensely grateful in early to 2014 to hear the kōrero of Maurice Gray, who spoke of the rebuilding of the ancient celestial nodal point for the flow of Te Whai Ao. Te Whai Ao being the bright light energy. This aligned the language my son was sharing with me. My son at the time would have been 13. I had learned since the late 80s in relation to the quantum nature of health and healing of our energies and our inner vibrational frequencies. So it was the alignment with what Morris was saying, and I would connect with it. What I had learned since 1988 around the challenges of health. Today, I believe we are being called to restore our lives in ways which are truly life-sustaining for all life, as Joanna Macy has articulated since the early 90s. Any of you have heard of Joanna Macy? Personally, I see the coronavirus as an opportunity to purge out the toxicity that has disrupted the natural flow of my body rhythms and cycles, and the air, the ether, the water, the earth elements. This is substantiated in conjunction with podcasts I've heard of Dr. Zach Bush, who is the only one that, for me, has really made sense about this coronavirus. As councillors of Environment Canterbury, you have responsibilities and obligations to our youth. Inspiration from bodies like ECAN is critical to our young people, not so that they do not lose heart or feel despair about the well-being of the planet they are inheriting from our generation. For me, this is about right relationship. And as guardians, the mahi, to be guardians, to be kaitiaki, we are caring for the well-being of all the natural sources of life. We are the keepers of the balance of nature, the balance with nature, to secure the well-being of our young people, the plants, the animals, and sources of clean water. It is their right and our right to access a healthful life. Is there conscious awareness that chlorine and fluoride in water create over-acidity in the body? Our youth need role models who walk the talk of healthful futures. Many sacrifices have been made to human health in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There's been carelessness as institutions have been too concerned with economic growth and the growth of quantity over quality, in particular in our food in regard to the land management. The cultural landscape in New Zealand has not reflected a respect for the mauri of our whenua, our land, and we have lost the ancient relationship with the land and all it nurtured. Experience since 2007 in journeys to our family village in Samoa and the village of Lepa, where my son's father comes from, experienced the havoc of the tsunami, the devastation that came in 2009. But through these experiences, I've been a respect for the power of nature and of life lived in cooperation, so that the vibrations as we work with the land, with nature, are harmonious resonance. In Samoa, I feel like I'm living an earth-centered culture, one that carries the heart of the earth. There's been quite a lot of language about the biosphere coming out through the Pachamama Alliance I've looked in with, who operate out of San Francisco. It's crucial systems that practice with our biosphere, because humanity, in my opinion, in the open world has been out of sync with natural cycles. To enable men to realize that you have an opportunity through your obligations, both your Waitangi and the people of Canterbury, to co-design the way forward. Whakaora Whakaropo is a wonderful example of the work led through Rapaki Marae to weave a brighter future and a brighter way of living for our young people. This must become integrated throughout the entire of Canterbury so that we purify our environment and all our kai, all our food, so that we can enable our tamariki, our children, and our youth, our rangatahi, to create and weave the strands and healthful lives and healthful consciousness. It is at a vibrational level toxicity is felt when a being is sensitive to elements of body and environment. Last night, as I flipped through the agenda, the link is a big long one, but I noticed that the nitrate issues are to be assigned to the Ministry of Health, alongside many, many people who have endeavoured to protect our health and defend the earth. I'm unsure that the Ministry of Health has the capacity to work with the issue of nitrates. We need to be respectful to the Indigenous wisdom and the Earth Keeper's wisdom to regenerate balance and balance life on Earth. I have a list here from Mike Roy, who probably quite a lot of you know of that about couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the work of Mike Joy. And I also have three other pieces. This one is a document that I have access. I was today, and I found out that the acidity in my body was really, really critical to the health of my being, and that I needed to alkalise my body. If we look at the land and the waters, they're both majorly over-acidified. My son has gone through this Rudolph Steiner School, and I was introduced to the biodynamics movement through that. On the back of this document, there is 3 approaches to growing and 3 ways of looking at a carrot. One is non-organic, where the chemical formulae for nature and life looks like this. It won't be easy for you to see, sorry. And then there's the organic, where there's no synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. And there's the biodynamic, where the soil and life is a living. So this guide shares the cosmic nature of the interconnectedness with star patterns that we have come to Earth, with the forces of the sun, the forces of the moon, in alignment with the forces of the Earth when we treat her well. And I'll just finish with something that I retrieved from my mother's godmother's family as I was looking at photos. And it's of the Mid-Canterbury Federation of Country Women's Institute at Diamond Jubilee in 1995. Their motto, "Love is the soul of our movement and service its expression." I don't imagine that there's anybody else necessarily who's had to do 30 years of work in service of health. My family's journey was Huntington's disease, and I committed to that because it had taken many of my family. Pesticides have taken many of my family, also my extended family. There are no, there's not much out there that gives me hope at this stage that this is going to be turned over quick enough, because it's an issue of boundaries. But for me, number one in Aotearoa is health, because if we haven't got the health of the land, how on earth can we have the health of consciousness to the health? So in a time of pandemic language coming through, I am blessed to know the language of quantum healing that was introduced to me by a dancer from New York in 1988. And she shared that healing is possible. And to know of somebody in Hawke's Bay, a man called Glenn Atkinson, who is working homeopathically, or has been since probably the 90s, to heal the land of all the toxicity. And I'm incredibly grateful that the Waitaha people have shared the wisdom that they carry from the ancient traditions, and that Morris was one of the carriers alongside a second mum who was at the Waitaha elders. And she has just passed away, so it's now my role to stand up and speak with as much grace as I'm able to and speak a truth that I have experienced. But I thank you all for enabling me to speak and share this. I'm sorry I'm not doing a PowerPoint presentation because I don't have the skills to put one together right at the moment. But having been born in Otatahi Christchurch, living in Auckland for 20 years, where I met many Pacific people, the Pacific people, my Maori brothers and sisters, have experienced much trauma and much terror through the way the lands have been managed. And I'm not putting that on any of you people, but I'm saying, please, please, this needs actioning now, not waiting for 5 years. Thank you.
Have any councillors got a question? Councillor Farn.
Thanks for your presentation, Robin, and thanks for being here today. I just wanted to pick up specifically on your mention of whakaora whakaroto, which I'm really privileged to be representing council on that governance group, that plan. And my question was, we're going into our long-term plan process where we're considering, you mentioned that that kind of planning should be rolled out across Canterbury. And I guess my question for you is just, would you consider submitting on our long-term plan and actually encouraging us to take that kind of integrated catchment approach more fully across Canterbury? That would be a really proactive way that you could have your voice heard in that. And I just want to note your comments around the Māori of our whenua not being respected, and you might not have time to stick around, but I just want to flag to you that later in the agenda, which you might have seen, we'll be talking about the national freshwater management, where that's about elevating mana of the water body above any other considerations. So I just wanted to flag that as a positive step forward where things I think are changing. So thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Farn. Is anybody else wanting to ask Robin a question? All right, well, we'll do now. Thank you very much for coming along, and do please follow up with making a submission to our long-term plan. That would be excellent to do that.
And that I will be exhausting to do that. I have a lot of, I've spent 2 weeks bringing this together. I don't work in a paid role anywhere. I work to ensure that my son, age 20, is healthful, and that, yeah, that we want to be in, well, we want to be in New Zealand, we want to be in Aotearoa, but at the moment, Samoa would be an easier place. So I need resourcing if I'm to do something like that.
It would be good if you just sent us maybe an email correspondence when you say, yeah, just a few lines. That would even be helpful. Thank you very much. So thank you. So I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder to receive your report, and then we're going to pass it to the Chief Executive to ask for her to investigate and send you a reply. So Councillor Farn, would you like to move that? Seconded by Councillor Craig Pauling. All those in favour, please say aye. There being nobody against, that's carried. Thank you very much, Robin. Good to see you. You're welcome to stay and make yourself comfortable. Now we've got another group. We've got a group of young women from Girls High. So welcome up to the table, Aki Gillespie, Emily Brown and Catalina Hill. If you'd like to come and have a seat, that'd be great. And you're going to speak to us about the interesting research project you've done around rail. So who would like, just take a chair, whichever one you like, sit down, and you've officially got 5 minutes, but seeing there's 3 of you, I think we can be a wee bit flexible like that. And Councillor Mackenzie is helping you, so you've now got two machines. You just have to press the button, and off you go. We're having a PowerPoint, are we? And it looks like you've got it all set up. Right, over to you 3. if one of you just presses one of those.
Hi everyone, my name's Aki and this is Emily and Catalina. We're Year 13 students from Christchurch Girls High School and we're here to present a brief summary of our geography research internal based on the viability of a rail scheme for Christchurch for the next 20 to 50 years.
The specific geography internal allowed us to pick our own research topic that was based in our local community. After brief research and some background knowledge, we decided to further investigate the potential of a rail system. After deciding our research topic, we had to come up with a plan on how to collect our primary data. We started by interviewing traffic engineer Axel Wilk and councillor Mike Davidson, who were involved in the original discussion of a train system for Christchurch. From here, we created a brief 8-question survey, which was targeted at 5 key locations: Rangiora, Kaiapoi, Rolleston, Templeton, and Hornby, as these followed the current heavy rail system that would become the potential spine of the scheme.
After sending out a survey to community Facebook pages, we closed it with 256 responses, allowing an in-depth analysis of our findings. We also carried out another interview with Councillor Tan Apanui and Councillor Nicole Marshall, and they helped us solidify our ideas and perspectives.
From the surveys, we were able to create summary graphs that gave deeper understanding of different perspectives that were held by the local citizens. In this graph, we can see it shows the majority of surveyees travel into the CBD 3 to 5 days a week, which mirrors the average school and work week, which created the target audience of under 60.
This next graph shows the drastic difference between the use of public and private transport, with the percentage of private transport being 90.9% compared to 4.7% for public transport. This highlights the importance of having a reliable public transport system that is attractive to all age groups.
This graph shows whether people would be happy if the council were to redirect a portion of their taxes into building a potential train system. You can see that all age groups predominantly voted for yes in the blue. However, 19 to 25-year-olds are more inclined to vote no in the orange than any other age group. This final graph shows the likelihood of use of train systems that were to be built. As you can see, the majority of people were inclined to vote highly likely. However, there were some people that did vote no, and the reasons for this included the potential high cost, the inefficiency of the current public transport system, and there are already new motorways being built, so they didn't see a point of building a new public transport system. Through analysing, it was clear that there were 3 main points that would need to coincide with each other in order for a train scheme of such size to go through. It had to be political, economical, and sustainable for it to go through.
We found that the interaction between these 3 key points is why Christchurch will ever want a train system. Because currently the political system is too fractured for a proposal of this size to go through, and the original plan was far too expensive to even be considered.
What we would suggest is a scheme that begins with the current heavy rail system being done up and uses the spine for future expansion. This would allow us to see the increase in interest as well as possible funding for future improvements. We also need to take into consideration the world's current economic situation. With COVID-19, it is unlikely that a plan of this size and cost is at the forefront of people's mind. However, in saying this, it is predicted that Christchurch's population is only expected to increase. And to avoid the current transportation issues that are happening in Auckland currently, it would be wise for the council to prepare for a future of rapid transport.
Thanks for your time and listening to what we heard. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you very much. What a great project and very well presented. Councillor Scott, you've got a question?
Thank you, girls, and good to see you here with this piece of work. Councillor Apanui, it's really close to his heart what you've done here. But my question is around the use of the word fractured. You said decision making is fractured, and
terms of PT in the city. What do you mean by that?
So at the moment, the current rate when it comes to public transport, it has to go through district, city, regional councils, even national and centred government. So if one of those councils voted against it, it wouldn't go through. So there has to be some sort of plan that will go through all systems of government for a plan of this size to go through.
Thanks for that, because I think we should respond to you on that actually, in terms of the process. So, but thank you for bringing that up.
Anybody else would like to ask a question? Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you for your research. I was really interested that for the young people particularly, but in fact most of them said, look, we wouldn't use it. So I just wondered, besides the a matter of cost, and I think you said someone said the system didn't work very well. Were there any other sort of reasons that young people wouldn't use a train transport system?
So for that one, it was based on the bus system as well. A lot of them wouldn't use the train system simply because a lot of them range in like the uni as well as the tradie kind of internship age, and a lot of tradies need their own vehicles. We also found that we asked for a few comments on why they thought this way, and a lot of them simply was because they didn't see the point, considering they're building such big highways and motorways out to those places.
Thank you, Councillor Southern.
Yeah, I was really interested in how you got 256 survey responses. I wonder, firstly, how did you do that? And secondly, how did you ensure that that was representative?
We did it by joining. So I joined multiple different Facebook pages, and then I would message the admin and ask if they could post our survey onto that page, and with a little description of what it's for and like why we're posting it. And then I guess we would kind of just rely on the fact that Facebook is kind of just open to everyone, so there would be a variety of all different ages and just different perspectives on that page. And since I posted it on maybe 8 different Facebook pages, so we got a lot of different responses, and it built up to 256 responses, which was really good.
I'm really impressed by that number, and I think it also speaks to how interested people are in this topic. I think that is also a key takeaway from this. Thank you very much.
Tau tuatai, tino wai o kaunga mahi. Well done, awesome work. It was a great presentation, really concise and informative. I have a question about, did you do any research into how much money has been spent on alternatives or other public transports over the last 10 years, and could this have financed the rail system? Have you looked at that?
Yeah, I have this stat here actually that currently they're thinking of improving bus services and transit routes, quadrupling like the size of it by 2048, and that'll cost up to $1 million, so $800,000, $4 million. I think that is correct for bus routes, but we haven't really done much on like we don't really have much like accurate costs of railway in Christchurch.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Clearwater.
I just wondered if I might respond to Councillor Scott's comment about your comments about the system, the decision-making system was structured, if I may. So, look, the combined councils, we have a joint public transport committee, and that is made up of representatives of all of the councils. Okay, and it might interest you to know that in fact when the decisions are made by that joint committee, in fact they're invariably by consensus and agreement. So although I take your point that in fact the planning is moving more slowly than people would like, but in fact it is happening. And like an example is there is a mass rapid transit business case which we and other councils are putting to government like every day. So just following up Councillor Peter Scott's point about that's perhaps not as fractured as we might have heard.
So one last question from Councillor Apanui.
So I suppose it's more of a thank you for bringing this in than it is an actual question. Have you guys ever thought about applying for a job at Weekend?
I think yeah, I mean, it's not never in the cards, I guess.
Hillary Clinton, she says never say never, so you've got to say that, never say never. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much. It was an excellent report, and it's great to hear from young people such as yourselves. And of course, it's carbon emissions is something that we really all need to be concerned about, and we truly are around this table and we're looking for lots of options. So we'll pass a resolution in a minute and you'll get a reply from our CEO about it, and we wish you well in your after you've finished year 13. Well, first of all, getting through your end of your year assessment. Good luck with all that. And good luck at university next year, and you can do more wonderful research because that's what we need. So thank you very much for coming along. So I call for, Councillor Scott, do you want to move the resolution? Councillor Scott is moving that we receive a report from the three of you and we refer the matter to the Chief Executive, and it's seconded by Councillor Clearwater, and to investigate and send you a reply. All those in favour of that resolution, please say yes. Everybody's in favour, it's unanimous, so thank you very much, it's carried, and thank you for coming along. It's lovely to see you, three of you here. And I used to go to Bills High, so I think it's great that you're here. And I told you I had that red thing around my jacket too, but I think it meant something else from the 1969. You might think that's a long time ago, but I don't. Anyway, thank you for coming. Okay then, bye. Right, now we have to move on to more formal things on our agenda. We're up to the minutes. Has anybody got any issues with the minutes? I move and minutes, Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie are correct and confirms them as correct. Who's going to second it? Councillor Claire Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. Matters arising. I don't believe there's any matters arising that we haven't picked up through the appropriate channels. The next item on the agenda is our new standard item that we've put on the agenda to highlight that we've passed the resolution around a climate change emergency. That's on page 20. As everybody knows, it's going to cover a different short topic each time. This time I'd like to ask Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie just to say a few words around it. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So this was a summary on the documentation for this meeting. So that people who are not councillors can understand it. So our climate change program means that every plan that we prepare, every consent that we consider, every dollar that we spend, every decision that we make now has to take climate change into account. Also, we've got staff preparing Canterbury specific climate change predictive information and enable district councils and community groups and other groups to be well informed so they can take steps that will help with our communities adapting to climate change. Also, our close involvement with the Climate Change Commission and the Climate Change Working Group means that we're able to reduce the amount of uncertainty around what to do in the face of climate change hazards, such as coastal inundation. So, yeah, did you want to?
So, at the last annual plan, we approved our annual plan, we put some money in for ensuring that we could do some climate change engagement. And I think that was really reflective of the fact we heard through the annual plan process that the community wants to see us leading in climate change action and thinking about the issues that are going to face our communities as time goes on. And by putting this onto our agenda each time, it just shows that visibility that we heard that and that we are taking that seriously. We're basically following on the work programmes that were set up by the previous council who declared climate change emergency, and we're building on that. And through this, putting onto our agenda each time just a flag of what we're doing and how it's being reflected through all of the different portfolios that we work on. It's just a really clear way of getting that visibility and enabling communities to see what we're doing and to comment on that and hold us to account. So I really welcome this move. So thank you.
I'll call for a mover for the resolution to Councillor Vicky Southworth. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. Thank you very much. We're moving on now to item 8, and that's where we cover the council committees. The first one is going to be spoken to by Councillor Claire Mackay. It's the Regeneration and Hearing Committee. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take this agenda item 8.1 on the Regulation Hearing Committee as read. As you can see in the agenda, we have the unconfirmed minutes of the Regulation Hearing Committee meeting on 10th of September 2020. I think I'd just probably take the opportunity to highlight a couple of issues that we dealt with in that committee. One was particularly where we were asked to look at appointing a hearing commissioner for a consent application belonging to Fulton Hogan. The committee has asked for further information from our staff regarding our concerns with potential conflict of interest or perception of conflict of interest, a recommendation and the possibilities that perhaps one of the ways that we could overcome that are look at alternatives or the option of a 2-member panel. So that will be coming back to us at our next meeting, I believe, which is next week. And I think the other thing just to note there is the other decision that we were asked to make was to appoint a hearing commissioner for several objections to decisions that have been made there, which is consent application decisions. And I guess the other thing, just draw people's attention to under the general business is that we make, as a committee, we make decisions around hearing panels on some of these objections, and staff are now going to report back the results of those, which I think will be very appreciated and obviously then become visible to the public as well. So is there any questions around that agenda?
All right, we'll call for a mover of that, and so Councillor Mackay will move that we receive the unconfirmed minutes. Who would like to second it? Councillor Grant Edge seconded that. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There being none, I'll declare that carried. 8.1.2 is the Canterbury Water Management Strategy Regional Committee, and I'll ask Councillor Mackay to report once again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I'll take this item 8.1.2, which is the unconfirmed minutes of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy Regional Committee meeting, which was held on the 11th of August. Draw your attention really there to the key piece of work that the regional council or regional committee actually dealt with on that day, and it was around the request that had come from the Canterbury Mayoral Forum looking for some feedback on their draft Canterbury plan at that stage, or the plan of Canterbury, I think it's called, isn't it, to get the words right. At that stage around the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, which they had confirmed and endorsed earlier on in the year. And just their question for the committee to consider was there a need to re-look at the vision statement of Canterbury Water Management Strategy? And in essence, the regional committee felt that it was very appropriate as it was. There may be some suggestions that we could provide to the Mayoral Forum around how we could continue to engage with and re-engage with the committee, particularly TAs, but the wider community as well, as we go into 10 years plus of the life of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. So is there any questions on that? Or points of clarification people wish to raise?
All right, I'll call for a mover. Councillor Mackay, will you move that? We received the unconfirmed minutes, seconded by Councillor Barnes. put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. There being nobody against, I'll declare that as carried. Thank you very much. We're up to the next heading, 8.2, which is statutory committees. The third one on the statutory committees is the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, and I'll ask Councillor Scott to present that, please.
Thank you, Anne. Just for you, this item, which is 8.2 on pages 34 to 41, is just before we go to recommendations. There's two things in there that I'd just like to point to, and that's item 7.1 in terms we've agreed on the weightings for investment priorities across Canterbury. So there's a significant agreement on that to get those numbers in the right places to give it a work. And the other thing that I think is quite good is that Mayor Gordon from Waimakariri has agreed to go on the safety committee. Councillor Apanui said that he was press ganged into that, and I just heard him volunteer. So anyway, that's what he's going to do. So that would be great, because that'll enable us to get those safety concerns for the Regional Transport Committee. And with that, I'd just like to move to recommendations. Receive the unconfirmed minutes of the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee on the 3rd of September 2020. And then there are two variations that we've agreed to Regional Transport Plan by adding the proposed activities to Appendix 1, Regional Program Details. One was the Fernside Clacton Roundabout Project, which is detailed in the minutes. And the other one is the Kaikoura District Council Light Emitting Diode Streetlight Renewal Program. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you. That's moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Tane Apanui. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, wait a minute. We better see if there's any discussion around that. Anybody wanting to discuss that before? Or Councillor?
Thank you, Peter. And I attended the meeting too and enjoyed it. And I'm very pleased that, and you referred to a member now, Dan being on the Regional Road Safety Committee. Very, very pleased, obviously, that is underway. Just the third recommendation, that the attachment definition of significant activities, I didn't see that actually attached to this lot of that, so maybe that could be sent through to us too, and it'll be no doubt part of the Regional Transport Committee minutes, Peter. Full.
Yeah, I think the reason for that, and we'll check with Peter on that, but I think the reason for that, Councillor Clearwater, is the fact that they're on an attachment to the minutes, so they failed to get, but it's quite interesting in terms of looking at that, because that's the hurdle rate for free money, I guess, in terms of RTSD and how we attribute that.
Were there any other points or questions anybody wanted to raise around this report? There being none, I'll put it that resolution. All those that Peter read out, I'll put them to the meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There being nobody opposed, we'll declare that as carried. Moving on to the working group reports this week. We have a report from our planting and regeneration working group. Sorry. Civil defence. Civil defence. If I looked over there, I have to. 8.3. Thank you very much, Council Secretary.
Thank you. We bring to you and confirm minutes of the and that you receive the confirmed minutes and note the resolutions taken under priority at that meeting. I'll discuss them a little more in the conversation. It was a good meeting. We canvassed a number of issues, including the health responses and matters with district health boards alike, and our responses to the COVID pandemic that we. There was also a significant conversation on the resurgence planning that we there was 2 or 3 into the future, and how we might handle a lockdown in Canterbury, similar to what happened in Auckland in the past if required. And subsequently to that, we had a brief paper from New Zealand Police giving an outline of how that lockdown would happen for Canterbury, effectively starting in Kaikoura and the Waitaki River and its bridges across the top. So and working back. So just to let you know that planning is in place if such matters do come to pass. Hopefully they do not. The resolutions that you have in front of you are that Council investigate the future potential cost of disruptive events and the impact of regionalisation on long-term budgets. That came out of a conversation around the long-term plan and the recognition that we're moving into the long-term plan space. As we see more disruptive activities, particularly around climate change, we wanted to have as clear a picture as a crystal ball might give us of what the future would look like in that disruption and what the costs might look like if we have to stand up for civil defence on a more frequent and longer basis. So just trying to get a handle of what that looks like for budgeting processes of millions of dollars along the way going. The other point is I leave it in Wellington, run by NEMA, and that's about putting civil defence operators into territorial authority and having them working in the territorial authority but funded by the region. And so there's an expectation there would be a transfer of rate contingencies from a TA to a region. So trying to get an understanding of what that might look like and what those costs might be. And if we were looking to put 10 people into 10 TAs, there could be $2 million or more associated with that, which would be potentially a 2% rate rise on our bill. But it's something that's required through our responsibilities with government. So these resolutions are there to look at what those potential costs might look like so that we can inform the long-term plan going forward, given that there are potentially significant costs associated with it. And I think that's probably all I need to speak to there. Are there any questions?
Councillor Edge.
Just points of clarification really on three points. One is item 3 there in terms of investigating potential future costs. Obviously those costs are going to be dependent on the nature of the event, and presumably some assessment will be made in terms of the relationship of costs associated with past events. That's about all you can do really. Is that the assessment of the group?
It is. So the stand-up cost multiplied by the time will be the total cost. There are reimbursements that come back from MB, from NEMA, from other organisations to reimburse for some of the costs associated. But I give an indication, the Phuket fire, which is noted in the minutes, at a cost of about 1.5 million for the few days that we're down there fighting that in the Mackenzie country. So I start to extrapolate some of those figures. So we can't fully understand what the costs will be, but we're just trying to get a bit of a science indication of what the future might look like to give us an indication.
Thank you. Any further questions, Chris?
Yeah, yes, just I had three points. Thank you. Related to item 5 there, the reinstatement of the $750,000 to the emergency fund. Again, presumably that's just to rebalance the books of expenditure that's taken place, but it's a regional wide targeted rate that puts that money back into the system as soon as feasible. And presumably there's no definite time frame about that time frame to put it back in, but it's a budgetary exercise as part of long-term plans.
You are correct. Within the general reserves that we hold with Environment Canterbury, it might be $10–15 million. One of those reserves is civil defence, which gives us the ability to utilise monies that are in reserve. Given that over the last probably 4 or 5, 6 years, we've had a significant number of events, we have run that reserve down, and I think at present we're about we're just under $1 million actually in deficit. We have the ability, as our chief executive informed the meeting, to borrow on any given day to ensure that we can take the actions that we need, but we feel it prudent to have our reserves back in place where we can continue the work that we require to do. And we have stated in here as soon as possible, but hopefully that will be spread over time. There was a thought that we would put about 350 million in this annual plan in this process, but obviously we've had the pandemic and we've gone further. So it's about trying to rebalance in time, but recognising that as they've said nationally, and the National NEMA office in Wellington, I think, has been stood up for something like 18 months continuously. So we are having these events of whatever type more regularly.
My final question really related to page 45. At your meeting, the emergency management budget for 2021 was also approved. Are you able to give us an indication of the value of that budget?
Off the head, is it $1.92 million? No. Yeah, I think it's in that vicinity, but I won't be held to it.
We can follow up with that information. Councillor Claire, what are your question?
I do, and Councillor just covered what my early questions were. I want to ask John about the Lake Pukaki fire report part, and just like certainly I see the commenters need to be on guard because in fact the fire isn't fully out yet. But I just wondered, in terms of the regionalisation of fire services, is your view that in fact that will assist us in future, especially say if a fire is within covers two territorial authorities?
The role, not specifically to this event, this was really well handled. You had Mackenzie District and their rural fire officers. You had FENS involved and fire parties from, I think, as far south as Ashburton or Lincoln and like. So the resourcing was really good within the fire service. Our role within civil defence was a wee bit of coordination, but not a huge input or impost into that. It was useful to have the minister come down and have a look and understand what was going on, particularly if it had got out of the way. And also note in the report that the Mackenzie District's Mayor's fund was in place, and their terms of reference was yes, if the government was of a mind, they could put money immediately into a fund to sort out some of the issues associated around the fire. There was, I think, one loss of house, amenities and the like. So Mackenzie District were congratulated on having their Merrill Fund up and running with terms of reference, which could allow things. The regionalisation itself is about, if I explain it like this, Mackenzie and Waitaki District are very small councils with a very limited number of officers, and so their civil defence role may well be a part of their full-time job. When the balloon goes up and they're required to work within the civil defence role, we lose a planner or a dog control officer or a this or a that. Regionalisation is about putting paid professionals into a council with the express role of working with civil defence. So in peacetime, they may well be promoting civil defence within the schools, within the community, setting the groups and parties up, being part of planning and work that comes back into a central space. But ultimately, if the balloon goes up and they're required for a significant response, you're not stripping an asset out of a council to make those things happen.
Thank you. Any further questions for John? All right, I'll take it that you're moving these resolutions, John. I'll ask for a second, seconded by Nicole Marshall. I'll put those to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. And there being nobody opposed, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. And now we're up to number 9, the working groups. And the one to report today is the Planting and Regeneration Working Group, which really links back to our climate change agenda in terms of being a nature-based response to the work we're doing in that space. So thank you very much, Councillor Pauling.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, happy to be presenting our update on the front-end regeneration working group. We've made really good progress toward developing our goal for a proposal for the next long-term plan, with the initial scoping work being done and drafted and starting to be discussed with council via the biodiversity and biosecurity portfolio. Our last meeting was on the 9th of September, and we talked about 4 main things. One was the project manager that we've been able to put in place with the resources allocated through the last annual plan. This is to help refine and structure the program and business case for the long-term plan program. We also looked at proposed signature program, utilising the term ururako and plant out my patch as an umbrella for collective action around biodiversity and biosecurity, with a focus on planting, of course. And it has 5 main areas, looking at sort of a catchment landscape scale approach, community and landowner action, action on public places and spaces, coordination and relationships, and then tools and support. We also had an update on a pilot on Ecan land, which is looking at to incorporate more Indigenous planting into Ecan reserves, which could help us find out how we can incorporate or implement this through the program. And going forward, we're going to do some more work on a bit of a summary around the stocktake of information that we've already gathered, more work on program development as part of the long-term plan. And actually this afternoon, there is a benefits realisation workshop where we're looking at the whole business case and what that might mean. So this is received, the paper for the working group in actions.
Right, I'll just call for a second and then we'll have questions, seconded by Councillor Megan Hand. Any questions? Councillor Scott.
Do more of a statement than a question, actually, because I think that we had a really good update yesterday on this, and I just wonder, in view of that, whether some of the language now becomes more directive in terms of how you look at this. And I'm thinking about looking at, and I really hate wordsmithing, it's just not really stay out of this, but I just think that where it says in paragraph 4, design the project, the working group should explore, and I'm just thinking that will or must explore as part of their kaupapa, and in building the foundations for the journey, it's more about providing the administration support for the action. So I just think that we can be more direct around that.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you, Craig. I'm really impressed with the work, and it's really just to ensure that this work is really joined up with other work. For example, I think it's in today's press, I think it's the Christchurch Foundation looking at bringing Tui back in the Pacific. It's a wonderful idea, but just how we do that together, and making sure that in fact we and other councils too, I know, are doing separate pieces of work. So is there a way in which we can ensure that in fact we do work collaboratively with the other TAs?
Thanks. Okay, so there has been a little bit of work in our initial scoping where we've gone out to test some of the ideas with other TA staff, etc. But that'll be sort of the next phase of work. It's really going out and talking more fully with councils and other community groups that are already things haven't identified them. So yeah, definitely that's an important next step.
Anybody else want to make a comment or ask Councillor Pauling a question? All right, well, Councillor Pauling's moved this recommendation that we receive the paper from with the planting regeneration working group notes and actions. Who would like to second? Oh, did I get a seconder? Did I? Oh, you, Megan. Megan, you were seconding it. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There not being anyone against, I'll declare that as carried. Thank you very much. We're on item 10 now, matters for council decision. 10.1 is the essential freshwater package, and I'll ask Councillor Mackay to present it and go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to say we're getting to the meat of the meeting, but that's probably not so appropriate. I'd just like to ask Andrew and Olivia to come to the table, because I think this is quite an in-depth discussion. I think at this point I'd just like to have the opportunity that this agenda item is to ensure that we've got a public-facing document or a discussion around the essential freshwater package. And while the heading is that it's under matters for discussion, I guess that really the recommendation is there that the council notes the implications for us as Environment Canterbury and the wider community from the essential freshwater package. So, as said, and I take it as read for those of you that are sitting around the table, but I will just pick out the key points for the benefit of anybody that's listening in or going to watch the video in the future. So the Essential Freshwater Package was gazetted on the 5th of August, and it was made up of 4 documents, 4 policy documents, being the National Policy Statement of Freshwater Management 2020, the National Environmental Standards for Freshwater 2020, some stock exclusion regulations under Section 360 RMA, and some measurement and reporting of water take regulations, which came through as an amendment to the RMA. So as noted in the paper, the implications are far-reaching for us as an organisation, particularly on resourcing and funding and planning, consenting, compliance and science sections, but not only on the organisation, but for the wider community, and the implementation is going to have significant impacts as well. And I think that's really important to keep that in perspective. Some of the key points around is the engagement with Papatū, Runanga and Ngātahu. They're going to be fundamental to implementing this package, particularly with respect to the concept of Te Mana o Tūnawai, and I'll mention that later as well. So there's been ongoing analysis by staff of this package and work to quantify the implications as we head into our long-term plan development. And we also know that the community wants some certainty about what the package means to them, and staff also looking to identify how that is best achieved. So with regard to the immediate priorities, I draw your attention to point 8 on page 54. And just to note that some parts of NES, in fact, probably if you were looking on the numbers of it, sections within it, it's the majority of them, but probably the critical ones are not till later. But so some parts took effect on the 3rd of September, and 2 significant pieces will be delayed and coming over the next 12 months. It's specifically with respect to the regulation around winter grazing and the synthetic nitrogen cap. So that's still coming, and as far as the timelines go. I guess the other point there, in point 8, it talks about the NPS also taking effect, and yes, it has taken effect in the fact that Environment Canterbury or regional councils throughout New Zealand have to provide some weight to what's in that NPS now. And also you'll see in the following paper that we've got several clauses that are to be enacted as soon as possible. We're dealing with that immediately after this item. And another thing to point out is just from analysis to date, there is limited duplication of the freshwater package with our regional plans. And we probably sit here and think that our regional plan is the Land and Water Regional Plan, but we do have other freshwater plans that are still live in the region at the moment. And they also will be highlighted in the following agenda item. So from the 3rd of September, when determining consents, both the current plan framework and the NES must be given effect to. And the objectives and policies with the NPS also needed to be considered. Staff have also been committed to developing a communication package to help applicants and the wider community understand how the rules will apply in the context of the current framework, and that's sitting up on our website now and is updated as more information becomes available, certainty around stuff. And I think it's important just to be the stock exclusion regulations and the measurement and reporting of water takes took place straight away, so those are actually already in effect through their processes. I guess just to draw people's attention to the 4 pieces of policy in our paper there, we've got quite a bit of detail around them, but around the NPS and the freshwater management, I think the key thing there are the new freshwater attributes and the new national bottom lines. Certainly, as was alluded to before, the concept of Te Manu e Te Wai has been elevated in the hierarchy of priorities around water, where this first and foremost we must consider the Māori of water, then water for human health, and followed by everything else. So changes are needed to our regional plans to give effect to the NPS, and we know that we've got a cut date of 2024 for that, with a proposed, well, with a view to trying to beat that by some degree, depending on obviously resourcing and capability and where we get to. And I guess just highlight around the national environment standards, they focus on the high risk activities around feedlots, standoff areas, land use intensification, and the use that I mentioned before. And managing the risk by use of consents, I guess you could say. There's some other clauses in there around structures. Exclusion, I think that possibly in the paper does talk about this, that we have got some pretty strong struck exclusion rules already in Canterbury to protect water outcomes. There are one or two where we will have to strengthen to become compliant with this. And I think probably on that one, most people will probably picked up in the media some issues really around the slope map that's currently there as part of the regulations for people to comply with around exclusion. And I guess they will be addressed in time. And in the water measurement and reporting space, I think Environment Canterbury's pretty well placed in that area where we've got a significant amount of our water take consents already telemetry in here and compliant, but obviously there'll be some extra work required in the space for Environment Canterbury from the data reporting and how that's dealt with. So significant engagement is actually picked up there, that this is going to be quite a bit of work involved in this area over the next 2 or 3 years as we work through this. And as I said, an engagement plan is also being worked through for how we actually go out and discuss the implications and some planning aspects with our communities. So probably I'll open that up, and we've got specialists in this area sitting at the table to ask any tricky questions.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mackay. Questions. I'll start with Councillor Johnson and then Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Claire, for the comprehensive list of our obligations that are in these papers. And I note that these papers before us are, I guess, the NPS and the NES, and we've identified those actions that we must take as the council as mandated by central government. But can I ask, and possibly the Chief Executive, what actions are we taking as a council to seek practical or pragmatic solutions to some of the more unworkable measures that are in these documents? Are we having conversations with the industry and or central government to find some solutions, not to throw our hands up, but given the comment that's in the media, other councils and organisations are struggling with, I just wonder what conversations we might be having. And I ask this in particular given the tens of millions of dollars that this council has spent over the last 10 years in planning matters, and equivalent money that producers and growers have and are spending out in the community to give effect to our plans, which, if I read and understand correctly, may not bear much fruit given the indication of where government's travelling. So do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sunkel. You'll be aware, and it is on record, what Environment Canterbury submissions on these were, and there were a number of comments from us around the planning that we desire to have those plans recognised over a time frame and not have to reinvest current dollars to change those. Those submissions were some of many that the government took. In terms of the current conversations, councillors may very well be aware that Mr. Parker has created a freshwater implementation oversight group, and the regional councils have been invited onto that. There are 2 chairs and 2 chief executives, one of which is myself. There are also representatives from the primary industries, Kahui Waimori, and from environmental NGOs. That korero has yielded some of the responses that you would have seen with regard to pugging, the adjustments with regard to winter grazing in terms of feasibility and practicability within these rules, and that response has been taken up. The expectation is that that implementation process will continue, including with regard to the farm environment plans, and that clearly all of the regional councils, we wish to work together. We wish to work together with all of the industry, and we also recognize the conversations that need to happen with mana whenua in the process. I expect this to be an ongoing conversation, and will certainly be picked up again post this election.
Thank you for that. Just looking for some clarity for our communities, just to understand that we are taking this matter seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clearwater, and then Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your summary, Claire. And I'll start though around a question around the stock exclusion, and like certainly clearly we've got our current land and water regional plan, and there are other aspects so that government are bringing in. And I know that the effect is for a framework that's more protective for freshwater quality, and we're all supporting that. But I guess it's how we get there. So my question specifically though is when it comes to the further regulations, for example, including excluding animals, like how is that going to work, say, in the middle high country or hill country, where there's quite a range of a number of streams or rivulets coming together? Can we sort of have some clarity on how that might work in the future?
In terms of, I guess, how the application of the regulations sit alongside our plan, they apply in addition. So the stock exclusion regulations have provisions that apply to low slope land and non-low slope land, and the non-low slope land provisions are developed, I guess, to recognise that there are some restrictions around practicality of measuring stock in some of those areas. So from a raw perspective, both of these sets of regulations will sit alongside our plan. So in terms of for users, they're just going to have to look at both of them and comply with whichever is more stringent.
So, thank you. And I just wondered too, though, like given that slopes aren't consistent, in fact, over a hillside, just how is that sort of practicality being decided? Do we know that yet?
We don't, but I suspect it might be something that's raised the Freshwater Implementation Group or addressed through that forum, as the CEO mentioned. So they have developed a low slope land map in impact farmers where low slope land and non-low slope land applies, but they haven't explained how that map's going to apply in a practical sense. And I think it is something they have to work with other regional councils on getting some certainty around a consistent application. But it's an ongoing conversation, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Lanfarm.
Thank you. Yeah, I really welcome this MPS, particularly around Te Mana o Te Wai. I'm glad that we're noting the significance of this in terms of a change in our legislative approach to how we manage water, where the health and well-being and the mana of the water bodies come first. I just really welcome that. My question was specifically around point 11 in our paper, where we mentioned that a long-term vision for freshwater in Canterbury will need to be developed and incorporated into our RPS. This, I'm noting that this is pretty in line with our discussions about having longer-term planning horizons for the planning matters that we do action.
But I'm just wondering, is this sort of more, is it actually clarified if this has to be something specific, or is it more about a framework in which we undertake our planning?
In my understanding of how the MPS has come about, one of our first steps is to explore and understand what Te Mana o Te Wai means on a catchment by catchment basis. To undertake doing that, that's going to require a conversation with mana whenua within each of those catchments and our wider community. This council is in a really fortunate position because it already had planned as part of this current long-term plan, a review of the regional policy statement, which allows us to be able to have that end-to-end connection between what we're saying in our regional policy statement for delivering on that policy framework within Canterbury, and how the land and water plan will give effect to both the MPS freshwater management and to the regional policy statement to achieve those outcomes that are in the MPS freshwater management.
Thank you for that answer and that question. That was excellent. Councillor Smith.
Look, I don't know whether this is the right place to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Look, I'm immensely frustrated with this process. I understand our obligation today. I understand what we need today. But I've been involved in water management in Canterbury since 1996 and involved in the Mayoral Forum process to set out a better planning standard for Canterbury in 2006. Involved nationally in terms of trying to set the first national policy statement on freshwater with the previous Labor government. And we've made huge progress, and I'm a great advocate for what we've done in Canterbury. Across Canterbury, I've stood up a forum in Canterbury and supported this council in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of the process. I take exception to say that we need a long-term plan on this. We've got one. We've got one. We developed it a long time ago. It was a long-term plan. We put the planning in process, land and water plan, our sub-regional plans, and we all talked about the fact that these aren't working. Once we go through them, then we'll type them up. We stood on the edge of Te Waihora with Minister Parker and talked about the processes we were in with him. He made note of the fact that we had made progress, that we were doing the right things, and that he wouldn't interfere in that process. I think we're an impediment at the moment to a national standard for all these things. I think that we're in the road, and the sooner we get out of the road, the better. So I'm frustrated by the fact that Southland is leading on this, and they're leading in the newspaper. They may not be leading in terms of progress, but they're leading in the newspaper. We're seeing this being behind in this process. We stand up in a farmers meeting in Canterbury and try and support some of the things that are coming our farmers' way at this moment. It's very, very difficult in the sense of it. Very difficult. Look, and I'm saying this as an advocate for my constituency. It's not a criticism against this council, but what I'm trying to bring to you is what they would tell you if they were in this room also. And instead of going forward and using this money that we spent on planning, and Andrew gave me privilege to the amount of money which we're publicly notified amount is closing in on $60 million that we spent since 2010. And our view always was that once we got through over the hump, we would take some of that and put it in the implementation space. So if we could take 1 year's worth of planning or one term's worth of planning, say $5 million and put it in the implementation space, what sort of progress could we make? And that's what we're talking about in terms of a long-term plan. Where are we going to get the cash to do these things? Well, not having to go backwards and do maintenance on our plans would be one place we could get it from. So Stephanie, I know there's a huge weight on your shoulders on this in terms of implementation, but I think you know where we're coming from in terms of where we've been, and you've been part of that also. Andrew's been part of that also, and I know that we've got some great ideas in terms of how to go forward. But having this stuff chucked at us, I resent it.
Okay, anybody else want to speak? Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to support everything that Peter said. I'm equally as frustrated as Peter, and obviously on record on that. in terms of where we're at with this. And I would like to see this table take a leadership role in terms of defending our record and really upholding the fantastic work that has been done here. We know it's not finished, but we also know that we've made absolute strides in progress as we've set out to form the land and water plan. And I'm very, very frustrated, like Peter, that we have the potential for having to go over this once again, to spend tens of millions of dollars again for what I would query is no environmental gain, in the sense that it's not going to speed up lag effect any quicker. It's not necessarily going to get us the outcomes that the Minister wants us to get to, and it's going to damage the relationships that we have formed over a long period of time in this region, which have taken us forward in progress out on farm. And I have real concerns that this approach and us not standing up and making clear statements about this approach will damage our ability to actually implement anything that will make a difference for water quality in this region. So I'd just like to again support what Peter has said and ask that this table makes a clear statement, whether it be via Stephanie or publicly, that we are frustrated. There has been no recognition of the progress that we have made, and that we are frustrated and worried that we will be putting at risk the relationship we require to make real progress in environmental improvement in Canterbury.
Thank you, Councillor Pauling.
First of all, just want to acknowledge what Peter and Megan have just said, and acknowledge definitely the work that has gone in the last 10, but also longer than that, around getting our plans and our people, on a better path around management of freshwater in Canterbury. But I don't share the sentiment of frustration, actually. I am challenged, definitely. I'm challenged by what's put in front of us by the government, but I'm not frustrated, because I think it's important that we send a message to our community, not of angst, actually, but of yes, challenge, but also that we have to move forward. There are more things that we can gain. I think there are more gains to be made from improved management of our waterways, improved management on our farms, improved management of our urban waterways and urban systems. So I take it as a challenge that we have to stand up for and do something about, not not throw it back. So that's what I would do. So I acknowledge the work we've done, and yes, I do think we need to send that message through that we have done a job. We have done a good job with our community. I think we risk more by throwing that back at government potentially, and risk losing some of our community. Actually, I think it's better that we stand united and say, let's take on this challenge together, because there is still room for improvement. That's what I would like us to say to our community. So, yeah. Thanks for the debate, though.
Thank you, Councillor Edge.
I can see a different opinion here, but I really support these initiatives on the freshwater package. I think that they are setting the bar higher than what we have been doing here in Canterbury, and I think that they will lead to more significant and a faster pace of change. There will obviously be conversations that need to be had, but by putting the water resources first, I think it takes a different approach on things. And the challenge will be to, and we've already said it in the statement here, there's limited duplication between our existing rules and plans and the regulations of the new NES. And as we go through that process of seeing exactly what the implications are, and we're not 100% sure what they will be yet, I feel confident that the public will be supportive of these new proposals. The four of them measures together will, in my view, reset the balance in terms of nature. And obviously we have economic issues as well, but the natural environment has been degraded for far too long. And if these things can put a
reset those balance, I think that would be a good step.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Councillor Clearwater.
Look, I acknowledge the work that has been done before too. It's in many ways a lot of our ancestors too were also environmentalists. But I guess it's quite clear it's clear in this report too, that for example the land and water, our own land and water regional plan has helped make significant progress. I think we also need to listen to the actual representatives of the farming communities besides the people on this council. And that it's good that people have expressed your concerns today. But yeah, it was just yesterday that we actually heard from a significant group who represent farmers in this region. And they were quite clear about being able to work collaboratively with us and with government. They were also clear that there were some things they wanted sorted out, just as we've indicated today. Well, I think that, there's no question in my mind that the public really want to see advances in the quality of our water. And farmers are also environmentalists. So how we get there that matters. That's going to be important for our decision making around this table. Today, what's in front of us is simply the implications for the wider community. That's what it actually is about. That's all we need simply doing today, to my mind.
Thank you, Councillor Clearwater. Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased that we are actually starting the implementation of this. To me, this mana o te wai, it feels like we've got things in the right place. We've got the water first. And I feel unless we put the environment first, unless we put the water first, then we're going to suffer. In fact, I would argue we're already suffering. So to me, this is the right thing for us to do for everyone in Canterbury, and that's what our responsibility is to do.
I'd just like to comment really. It seems to me the last three councillors have missed the point of what Councillor Scott and Hans and Pauline were referring to, and that is it's not so much the direction which this council has already set, and it's not the fact that we are trying to push back on the new standards that the government wants to adhere to, the new attributes, the new the changing in standards of, or even the fact that Te Maro Te Wai elevates the health of the water bodies over all other priorities. It is the fact that we are actually, as a council, had plans in place which have cost our ratepayers tens of millions of dollars, and that the government hasn't recognised that contribution by our ratepayers to put us on the journey. And I want us to repeat that exercise to a greater, pretty much to a larger extent. And I think that is the issue that we are trying to highlight. It's not the direction we're going on. It's not whether or not we support Te Maro Te Wai. It's not whether we support the new attributes for the quality. It's actually reflecting on the fact that we as a council, and I should point out that I wasn't part of the council at that stage, previous work by previous councils, we're leading New Zealand in setting up plans to address water quality issues, and that has been ignored by this freshwater package, and that should be acknowledged.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Would anybody else like to make a comment? Councillor Nicole Marshall.
Thank you, Chair Huey. I want to thank everyone who's been involved in putting this paper together for us. I know there's been huge amounts of work going on behind the scenes, and I just really want to thank you for bringing together a really strong and concise paper, one that's also got a lot of information. Like many around this table, I've been hearing a lot from people just screaming for information from UCAN. We do have information on our website, but I'm constantly hearing that this doesn't address all the uncertainties they have. This paper does go some way towards filling that void, but we need to continue to be proactive in communicating what we're doing, what our direction is, what our advice is, and what the community requirements in all of the spaces of uncertainty that this whole package has created. We're now 3 weeks since we had to since elements of this package became operative and a month since release. Just to me, it's frustrating that we're only now in a space to understand what this means to our organisation and our communities. And I don't begrudge you at all for that, because I know government wasn't forthcoming in keeping us up to play with that. And I know that we have responded as best we can in this space. And I do, again, I want to thank staff and everyone involved who's gotten us to where we are today in terms of the level of information we have. And that I totally acknowledge you and thank everyone involved, and that where we are today with this package is not our doing. And we need to continue to respond as an organisation, but also with our Canterbury community. Again, reflecting on what's been said here, as a council, we've spent tens of years and tens of millions of dollars doing the right thing under existing legislation, whereas others haven't. And now we're back in the same boat with everyone else. And to me, that's not fair, and there hasn't been any acknowledgement of that. And I totally acknowledge the role that Stephanie has in here to be an advocate. And I had previously raised this at councillor within council, you know, how and what can we do to better advocate our position and as being a leader in the last 10 years and, you know, having suddenly not be a leader anymore. I'm really excited by the enhancing of Te Mana Utawai and what that means for our environment and our communities. It is what people have been screaming out for a large extent. I'm really excited to see that play out in the urban space and have those urban people taking more responsibility, including myself. You know, it's the Te Mana Utawai to me is consistent with the direction we've been trending as a council, but the NPS has just put it on with a greater pace. And the pace is something I am excited about, but we need to be able to bring our communities with us. It's taken us 10 years to get to where we are today with our communities, and that's in a really great space. But the next 5 years are going to be really difficult, and we're going to be leaning on everyone who's associated with our organisation, basically under the huge, you know, environmental services umbrella, to make sure that we continue to bring everyone with us. And that's huge pressure, and I don't know, you know, how we're going to be able to resource this in a fiscal envelope that is acceptable to our communities. And that's again not a reflection on you as staff. It's just the situation that we're finding ourselves in. And I know we've kind of started the conversation around what our planning framework is going to be in terms of incorporating. Sorry, I don't have a question at the end of my next spiel. What was that? I should not interrupt myself. So we started having the conversation already around what our new planning framework is going to be looking like to incorporate this. Do we have yet any sort of ballpark figures in terms of what we're looking to spend to get things done by 2024?
It's information. Thank you for your feedback. 2 weeks ago, when I gave that to you, I requested a bit of time. That time has not elapsed yet. It's coming as part of the long-term plan discussions.
I'd just like to give Stephanie a chance to comment there.
What I'd like to comment on is the fact that all of the feedback that you're providing right now is shared in different parts of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And we are on a journey with regard to what those impacts are, and we will certainly bring those to you. And we absolutely commit to working with all of our communities as we work our way through this. We have always done that, and we will do that again. There is no doubt about that. The recognition around the fact that central government has made these decisions under law means we do need to recognize what we do to go forward. That is our role as the regional council. The what is in front of us. There is uncertainty in this. That too is challenging and requires very good communication. Not just communication, the continued strength of our relationships with our communities. The last comment from me is really going to be about the fact that this is not something that happens instantly. We're talking about to 2024. We're also talking about the way that changes might happen over the next little while. I do recognize that we have a number of potential changes coming our way, whether that's flagged in the Randerson report or otherwise. And I think we as a council then will need to work together with our communities through that uncertainty and through that change. In terms of specifics around dollars and cents, Councillor Marshall, those will be coming in the future. And very clearly, we will need to share that, as we would anyway, with our communities with regard to LTP consultations and then working through the usual community channel.
Thank you, CE. There's another comment from Councillor Vicky Southworth.
Thank you. Thanks for the paper. And I've just been reflecting, because we're in election time, of course, and remembering back to the last election, and there was a lot of talk about water and water quality during that last election. And I think this really shows the government was serious in delivering that challenge to what is for other regions actually a much greater challenge. I think we can be proud of ourselves that we, from what I can understand, that we did lead. We have been very influential in how this has been put together. We are recognised as national leaders, but nevertheless, this gives us challenges. It is unfortunate that a lot of money has to be spent on planning. I completely hear the importance of putting money into enabling people to take action, to do change on the ground, and that's what everybody needs to see. That's ultimately what planning does, but it is a driver. It's an important driver, and there is room to improving. And there is also a huge opportunity here, and we're required now to work more closely with Mana Whenua, and I think that's really, really important and important and significant change and emphasis in this particular planning document, planning policy. But I would like to say, as we're developing our long-term plan, it's really important, I think, that we keep sight on what money we can put towards engagement and action with our communities, and that, whilst the planning cost comes high, that we recognise and find places where we can put funding to make the most of what our communities want to do. There's a huge amount of willingness out there, including in our urban environments, to make change, and we can support that. And I hope through our long-term plan that we do actually identify those opportunities. So thank you.
Right. Just before we go any further, Councillor Mackay, I understand you're moving that resolution with Let's Go. I've led a debate. Do you want to move that? And seconded by Councillor Scott. So we won't be having any proper debate under the resolution, which is a bit unusual, but this is allowed. The chair's allowing herself to do it this way. Just to finish off, I'd like to say that, it is true that people are extremely interested in what's happening around water. It's of a great concern to everybody on our planet, and particularly in New Zealand. So I just think that this is part of what we're elected to be in. It's a very exciting space, and we have to navigate our way forward. And I think staff are doing fantastic work behind the scenes, and you will come back to us with an excellent way forward. And it's holding tight while change happens. And change is what we need at the moment. So I think it's all a very good process to be involved in. So I'll put the resolution.
Can I just make a point, just a point of clarification? Is this moving 10.1 and 10.2?
No, it's 10.1, Peter. Yeah, it's the resolution note the year, but this is just on the freshwater essential packet. It does not. All right, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Now we're going on to 10.2. I think staff, maybe you can just stay sitting at the table, because there was some questions earlier around this, if you don't mind. Yeah. So Councillor Mackay, just moving on to 10.2.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm aware of time, but this is probably a significant piece of some of the discussion that we've actually just been having. And this paper, I'll take it as read. The purpose of this item of council to approve the incorporation of a new objective and 2 new policies into our plans that are part of the NPS, and we're doing that in accordance with section 55(2)A of the RMA. Now that's actually quite significant, because it means while the council needs to improve the incorporation into our respective plans as soon as reasonably practicable, it means that the process is actually occurring without that community consultation, which we we've just been talking about, is that we would normally expect with Schedule 1 consultation and the wider community involvement. So the three clauses there are 322, 324 and 326 of the Freshwater of the NPS. They're outlined in Appendix 1 of the paper, which is on page 61. That's the actual wording that I understand we will be incorporating into our plans. And staff have also looked at which of those freshwater plans that have to be changed, and they are outlined there pretty clearly in Table 1. And well, we got 6 of them there, or 7 of them, 6 or 7 of them. So I guess it's just I don't probably need to really repeat, but these are the 3 sections of the NPS that we're going to put into the plan straight away. The NPS framework itself has got some weight during our processes that ECAN is going through going forward, has to be considered. But over the next 2 or 3 years, and until the notification, is going to be this wider discussion around the other parts of the NPS, the attributes, and some of the limits that are there. So that's part to come. And I guess the other thing just to note, if this council adopts a recommendation there today, as we've got on page 57, the public notification will occur within 5 working days of changes being made. Although our changes will occur 5 days after. Is that how I read that? Yep. So I think there's a couple of points staff might like to comment on around what is this feels practical and what's interest now, and then the consistency with the intent of our current animal regional plan, or the degree of consistency, which I think is actually there anyway.
Are you?
Oh, no, sorry.
First, both Olivia and I have some value to add in this conversation here, so thank you, Councillor Mackay. What I'd like to say is, as soon as, in my head, as soon as reasonably practicable means as soon as possible. A council meeting is needed to make a resolution, and as I understand it, this is the first council meeting after the 3rd of September, so this is as soon as possible to make this change. There are some advantages to you as a council making this change. The plan change 7 here is going to start on Tuesday. It would be much, much clearer for that process if there is a single suite of plans. These changes do need to be made to our plan at some point. And even if you do not choose to resolve to make these changes, they will need to be considered by consent applicants and by our consenting staff and by the panel considering Plan Change 7. I think that's all I had to say in terms of why those changes should be made today.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
All I was going to add to Andrew's comprehensive statement was that by making the changes today ahead of PC7, it also gives submitters and legal counsel acting for submitters the opportunity to be on notice that we've incorporated those provisions. So when counsel presents their legal submissions, they will have a framework in front of them and they'll know how to respond. That was the only additional comment.
Thank you very much for making that so clear. Councillor Mackenzie, well, wait a minute, I think we'll just get a resolution on the table this time. So are you moving that resolution, Councillor Mackay? Who's seconding it? Councillor Grant Edge is seconding it. Now we'll have, is there any discussion? Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Andrew and Olivia, for your explanation. I fully understand your explanation, and I fully understand why these have to go into the plans. But I guess I just have to make a point. I don't like the process by which we're asked to make we're asked to approve recommendations of changing our plans without having had that discussion, perhaps in a depth prior to the council meeting where we're asked to make the recommendation. And I And it may not have worked in terms of time frames, but I would have liked to have thought that we could have had this as a discussion around the water portfolio last week. But I fully understand that none of that would change the direction or the fact that the things still need to go into plans. But I think as a matter of courtesy, if we are asked why these changes are made by our constituents and we don't fully understand that at the time we approve them, then we're set up to maybe to look even more stupid than we already are.
Thank you. Any other comments or hands?
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Councillor McKenzie said. I have some real concerns about the way in which this has come to us as well. I don't feel that we've had enough information, fully accepting that we need to adopt this as required by the EPS, but I would have liked more opportunity for us to unpick the implications of this for our constituents and also for us and for Plan Change 7 submitters. And also not just the existing Plan Change 7 submitters, but those who may have been submitters had this have been in our plan at the time of notification. And I have real concerns that there's not an opportunity for people to consider this, to understand it, including ourselves. And I have real concerns about inserting this into our plan, raising its profile within the hierarchy at a stage so late within that plan change hearing process. And I feel like it's not operating while we're legally required to do this. It doesn't feel like operating in good faith for our community to me. And so I have real issues with this. I'm very challenged by this process. And I have real concerns that while the NPS does require us to do this as soon as reasonably practicable, I don't feel that it is reasonable to do it this quickly, and often fast policy is poor policy. It's not that it's about this just going in, it's about what goes in around it to support it, ensure that everything lines up well so the community has a good understanding of how it affects them, and we have a good understanding how it will affect our consenting processes, how it will affect our wider work that we're doing within the land management space, and also within some of our environmental mitigation space as well, particularly with ongoing discussions around fish measures and fish screens and that kind of thing in terms of non-statutory work we've been doing in that space. So I've got concerns that this has implications for that. I don't like the process. I feel that it isn't reasonable, even though it is required. So I just want to make that known.
Thanks. Just following up from Councillor Hand's comments, I just want to note the actual clauses that we are inserting here. And I just am looking for some comment from staff as to whether they are actually, some would say, completely in line with our existing plans, but I'm just noting the loss of river extent and values is avoided, for example. So presumably that refers to the bed of a river, which is would already be covered in some rules. Fish passage and also natural wetlands, the loss of extent of natural wetlands is avoided. So I'm just, yeah.
And if you're looking for, are they materially different?
Are they materially?
So would you like to make a comment?
I'll attempt to.
If we don't put you on the spot, so just feel free. We can get some information on that later if that's all right. But go ahead.
All I was going to do was make a comment about the language used in those policies. So it's strong language around the need to avoid. But having said that, we do have provisions in the land and water plan which set out expectations around minimising the loss of habitat around braided rivers, for example. So while the language is slightly stronger, the direction of travel in the land and water plan is reasonably consistent.
Thank you. I think we'll put this resolution. Oh, did you want to comment, Councillor Marshall? I didn't see you. Sorry. You're next.
I have two questions of clarification. So my read of the identified clauses and the whole EPS is identified clauses, all of the clauses that say every regional council must include the following policy. Is that correct? Cool. And then I would just like some clarification of what the process is should we pass this resolution to, incorporate these clauses into our plans, what then happens?
So from a process perspective, if resolution is passed, then council staff will undertake the process to start inserting these provisions directly into the plans. Those plans will be published on the website. Public notice will be placed, both a summary in the newspapers and also on our public website. And we could also undertake any additional communications. And I think the thing we will look to do is point that out particularly to the PC7 submitters, just so that they're on notice at our next communication, which will be either Friday or Monday.
Thanks, Olivia. One follow-on question of clarification. Why does the process not involve any pre-consultation before we make the changes?
This is a direction from central government. Consultation did occur. It occurred earlier this year and late last year, where submissions were called for, and an independent advisory board considered those submissions and made recommendations to the government. Now that that has occurred, this is the implementation step. I would like to make one other comment in respect to the process. These are objectives and policies. They are not rules. They will only be considered when someone already needs to come in under the existing land and water plan framework for a resource consent.
Andrew, one question. Yeah, or whatever you speak. Oh, yes, you can speak.
I'd like to speak to the report and just to say that for me, unique, and these concepts aren't new. We have heard about them, and there's been a potential for people, as staff have said, opportunity to make submissions earlier. But there's nothing in the appendix around natural inland wetlands that personally I would object to. It seems to me these are all ways of achieving the goal. So I really think that to indicate that in fact this is kind of like taking us by surprise, just is not true. We have had good warning. We may not have been entirely happy with whatever consultation means, and it is a directive of government, but it's not new. And I think if we were going to start picking out the policy, starting to unpick it, there shouldn't be too much disagreement around this as to what it would be.
Well, you can have a comment since I'm being very free and easy this meeting. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to that, Phil, and I think you've got a little bit off track in terms of where we're at on this. I don't think it's about anyone thinking any of this is new. It's around understanding the implications for our plans, for our existing processes that are in place, our existing work programs within us, and not feeling that we've had sufficient information to understand the implications, rather than about direction of travel, as Ian said earlier.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know that we need too much more debate around this, so I might put this resolution to the vote if everybody is happy with that. So I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against, please say no. Yes. Please note that Councillor Hand is abstaining. That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Councillor Mackay, for undertaking that report. That was very good of you. We're going on now to 10.3. This is the City Council Coastal Hazards Working Group. Councillor Southworth, you were going to say a few words about this. Thanks.
So just wanted to say that the Coastal Hazards Working Group has been set up by Christchurch City Council, and the purpose is to support and lead into an adaptation planning process which will manage risk and exposure to coastal hazards. Denny and I have been invited to join, or as a council we've been invited to join, and two of us, Denny and I, are going to attend. It seems particularly appropriate because Auckland South Christchurch constituency that I represent, and the North East Christchurch or constituency that Jenny represents, have extensive coastlines and contain coastal communities that will be directly affected by sea level rise. These communities are undoubtedly already thinking about the potential effects of this and what that might mean for them. particular forum, we'll be working through how to engage effectively and ensure that those individual communities can contribute to the decisions that are going to affect them, and that they can input their own local knowledge and offer potential solutions. And so this will develop an engagement framework with the staff at council, and we will just be two voices on a larger forum with working group.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Moved by Councillor Scott. Who would like to second it? Councillor Nicole Marshall. All those in favour, please say. Oh, do you want to speak to it, Phil?
So I think this is really significant and important for us to be doing. I think it's a great opportunity, and so glad we do it, because in fact clearly around the coastal hazards, it affects all Canterbury, and I look forward to what this working group brings. For example, the Greater Christchurch Partnership. It's a great opportunity, and I'm really pleased we're progressing this.
Does anybody else wish to speak? All right, well, I'll put that to, all those in favour, please say aye. No, anyone opposed? There's no one opposed. I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. We're about to exclude the public now, so if all the people that aren't supposed to be here would leave, that'd be excellent. We'll have a resolution to exclude the public. I'll move that from the chair.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I need to.
Oh, you need to turn this thing off.
I need to turn this thing off.
Yeah.
I also need to add, sorry, I need to add on page 66, the exclusion of the public clause. I've only mentioned the minutes from the CE committee. Sorry, there's also council minutes in there as well. Yes. I need to do the recording after this resolution. Or after the resolution. We need these people to. Oh, okay. Yeah, but I'll close the meeting when we go on public exclusion. Okay. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. All right. I'll move the resolution to go into PX from the chair. Seconded by Councillor Phil Clearwater. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. That's carried. Louise. Number 12. Any other business? Yes. Councillor Pauling.
It's just something that has occurred to me this morning that, and it's around Manaaki Tonga actually, and when we have public invitations, I really like it if we could give them a refreshment, because I feel real bad for people that they come here and we don't even they don't even get, like they can have a glass of water obviously, although there's not glasses of water over where they sit. But like a cup of tea and a biscuit out there would be really good. Or we could adjourn for like 5-10 minutes and let them go have something to eat. I'd love us to be able to do that.
It's really important that I'll get arranged for the next one because I totally agree with you. Thank you very much. No more discussion on that. Notices of motion, any of those? No, because I would have known about them by now. Any questions? I would know about those. No. Next meeting, the 22nd of October 2020. A closing karakia. Would you like to do a closing, Nicole Marshall?
Unahia ki te uru tapunui o tane, kia watia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te warua I te aratakaka, koia e rongo, o koia rā e rongo, whakaria ake ki runga, kia tina, haumie huie, ai kia.